gon' ride. I'm gon' ride. They gon' ride. We all gon' ride. I come from the hub of Southside, holding it down for my niggas that died.
Hey there, and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football Weekly. I'm Brendan Tuma, joined by my co-host Dan Tursky, and this week we also have a special guest star, Hume, who's also a sophomore here at UMass Amherst. It's been a crazy week in the NFL, and we have a lot to discuss. So with that, we're going to start a debate. Highlight of the day yesterday was absolutely C.J. Spiller going off with 15 carries for 123 yards, also had 3 catches for 47 yards, and he scored 2 touchdowns. Through halftime, he had 25 fantasy points and finished the day for 28. Going forward, what can we expect from C.J. Spiller, Dan?
C.J. Spiller's a top 5 running back. And
Going forward?
Yeah, and he'll finish within that range, I think. I think Fred Jackson's just about lost any opportunity that he had. I don't think anyone expected him to get hurt. That's why C.J. Spiller was obviously a late-round pick, and whoever got him is feasting in it right now, unless they traded him or something like that. But right now, if you have C.J. Spiller, you're in great shape to probably make the fantasy playoffs just because of him.
He definitely does it both in the running game and the passing game as well. Sorry, you traded C.J. Spiller after week 1. What do you think of him going forward?
Well, I'm still a little bit heartbroken. It was a tough trade. Give up Spiller and Brandon Lloyd, or Spiller and Torrey Smith for Brandon Lloyd. And looking back, probably a big mistake on my part.
You think Spiller's top 5? Top 5?
I don't think he's top 5.
We're
I
talking
think that's,
Foster, Rice,
you've got
McCoy.
Foster, Rice. It's still going. You've got Peterson, who I think is going to bounce back from his injury. I think Marshawn Lynch can be thrown into that category. Fantasy-wise,
okay,
you're not putting Marshawn
still got
Lynch
LaShawn
in that
McCoy.
category.
LaShawn McCoy is still up there. Hasn't had a great couple first
but
weeks.
needless to say,
MJD still in the category.
Spiller's absolutely
Chris
top
I
10.
think if he continues the pace he's on right now, he'll be top 5, if not the best player in
That's what I'm
fantasy
saying.
overall.
I think he's going to stay
But
on
I don't
this
know.
track.
I don't think you can continue 120 yards a game. And he's realistic. He's only had.
He was only on
I think it's
15
carries, so it's 16 first, 15.
He had
in the
15
second.
carries last week. He didn't even play in the second half. He racked up
So
123
you can't
yards.
expect 120 yards and 15 carries every single game. And
But
he had
that
2
was only in one half. What if he's playing in the second half?
But say the Bills are trailing, he's not going to get as much work. I mean, he does catch passes, which is a huge luxury.
He was listed as a wide receiver last year.
Yeah. So
Also,
he's,
he had 25 points at halftime, which means I think he only had 3 points in the second half. I think they really took it off him if he was playing the full game.
Yeah, they
I
rested
think
him.
if he even if he continues half of what he's doing now, I don't think I don't think Jackson gets his job back. When he
So
comes
if you're a
back.
Fred Jackson owner and you don't own C.J. Spiller, you're really worried, right?
Yeah, no, you're in trouble.
So you agree with
Serious
that, Dan?
trouble.
Yep.
Fred Jackson. You got to hold on to him. You can't
Hold
trade
on to
Fred
him. He'll
Jackson.
get his reps.
Well, he's a
but
backup now.
I don't know.
He's
Let's
not
give
going
him
to
one more
be. You
week.
can't.
Spiller.
How can you put Silver in
It
a
depends
backup
if he
role?
continues the
Yeah.
pace, which I think Spiller will, which is why I think Fred Jackson's pretty much
No.
done in terms of fantasy.
Fred Jackson had like 6 great weeks last season, and that's really all he's had in his career.
Yeah, that's true. So moving forward, another big storyline from Sunday was the scrambling quarterback. Between Cam Newton and RJ3, they combined for 150 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. If RJ3 ended up with 30 fantasy points, he was the leading point getter this week, correct? If he didn't run at all, he would only have 10 fantasy points. Cam Newton only threw the ball 20 times. So the question is it too dependent on the run to rely on these guys for your quarterback spot? Because if they don't run, they don't get a lot of points. And then also the other question is, who would you rather have? Dan, we'll start with you.
Well, we talked about this a little last week, and I said RG3. I thought he could be a viable starter if you were looking for someone. Now I think he's a for sure starter. I don't think there's any question there. I think you're starting RG3 unless you have like Drew Brees or Tom Brady on your team, and I still think you could still start him because he's gonna get rushing touchdowns if quarterbacks like that won't. I think if you have him on your bench and you have a stud quarterback, then he's looking real good for trade bait right now. I think if you have someone like, if you have a quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger or like Michael Vick, even someone like that, I think you're starting RG3 over him, over someone like that at this point.
I'm a Newton owner, and it's scary sometimes because if he doesn't run the ball, he's not a great fantasy. He's not a great.
He gets his
I think
fantasy
Griffin's
quarterback,
different though because he throws the ball so effectively as well. So I think he threw for, 1 or 2 touchdowns the week before, and then he still threw for 1 this week, right?
Yep.
And then he rushed for 2. He's actually only owned in 56% of the leagues. He's only started in 56% of the leagues. I mean, that's probably going to skyrocket for week 3. But I think just having a quarterback like RG3 or Newton who can rush, he'll give you rushing, touchdowns and yards, and passing touchdowns and yards. It's just such a luxury
They're
to
both
have.
great options.
Standard 10-team league, they're both starters.
Yeah.
Do you have a strong preference either way? That's still
Right now,
I like Griffin.
I'd lean toward RG3.
After just 2 games?
After 2 weeks,
Wow.
if that's what we're
I think
referring to.
he's Newton might be more of a threat to score rushing touchdowns, but I think Griffin's just an all-around. I think he throws the ball a little bit better than Newton. I think he's a little bit better of a decision maker.
I'd question that, but I think they're both pretty gonna finish out. They're gonna finish out top 10, top 15 quarterbacks, and I think they're gonna have a similar number of points come the year's end.
That would definitely be interesting to monitor. Again, another big Sunday storyline was the emergence of Danny Amendola. He had 15 catches for 160 yards and a touchdown. He did have a fumble, so he only scored 20 fantasy points. But for a while there, it looked like he was going to break Brandon Marshall's record of 21 catches in a game. Amendola is out there in a lot of waiver wire leagues. If he's out there in your league, we definitely recommend he's worth a pickup. But is he your starter in week 3 and going forward? Sam Bradford doesn't have a whole lot of...
He caught 15 passes this week.
And he was targeted 16 times, so...
15 catches.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you have to start him.
Yes.
You have to. You have to. There's no one else. There's nowhere else to go for the Rams. Sam Bradford's gonna maybe throw 3 picks in a game, but if he throws 1 touchdown, it's gonna be to Danny Amendola because it's not gonna beat anyone else. I mean, you have Steven Jackson is gonna be questionable for next week, and they could have either Isaiah Pete or Darrell Richardson as their starting running back. Pretty much 2 no-names. So the Rams, they're also not sure who they're playing this week. Are they playing the Bears?
Sure.
I think they're playing... Yeah, the Rams are playing the Bears this week. I'd expect them to go down early, and I'd expect them to be passing. And I think Danny Amendola, if you need a wide receiver, or a nice, solid flex option.
I think he's a flex player.
Yeah, I don't know if he's necessarily a
put him
starting wide receiver right now. I mean, he's probably going to end the season close to 90 catches. PPR leagues, I think he's an absolute must-start. But in regular leagues, he's not going to catch 10 balls a game. That's
What did he do
not
week
gonna
1?
happen.
Was he big week 1?
I don't think he was great.
I'm pretty sure. I believe he scored. We have.
But needless to say, he's ideally a flex player. You're not starting him over guys like Mike Wallace or Percy Harvin or anyone like that.
I mean, he's projected 10 points right now, and that's 100 receiving yards, no touchdowns. So I don't think he's a starter yet. If you're in need of a flex option, or one of your wide receivers went down, maybe start him. But I think that week's it's kind of an anomaly. I don't think he's going to have weeks like that all the time. So it's a gamble, but it's not a bad one.
Again, moving forward, Danny Amendola was a huge surprise and a huge producer. Big disappointment this week was Larry Fitzgerald. He had just 5 targets. He caught. If you're watching the Patriots game, you saw it. He caught just 1 ball for 4 yards. So he ended up with 0 fantasy points. The week before, he only had 6, and 4 of them came within the last 2 minutes. This guy was at least a second-round pick in all leagues. I'm an owner of him. I'm very frustrated. Kevin Cobb's now the starter there. They don't have as good a chemistry as Skelton does with him. How concerned should Fitzgerald owners be?
Concerned, terrified. I have pretty much one comment to give, and that's the game on Sunday was the worst game by yardage in his career since his rookie campaign in 2004, when he only had 1 catch for 2 yards against the Giants. And that's pretty bad.
You got to start him next week, though, right? You use your second-round pick on
So
him.
he's
I don't know. I think
arguably the best wide receiver in the league.
Most talented was.
Yeah,
Up there
next
with
to Calvin Johnson. But I think it's tough to be elite without a quarterback.
Last year, though, with
the Patriots, I think a lot of teams are going to take the approach of just doubling him the whole game and daring Kevin Cobb to throw to other people.
Last year, he had the same quarterback. He was the 5th leading receiver in all of fantasy in terms of total points at the end of the year.
Yeah.
it's just I don't see it.
Is this a rough 2 weeks?
I say bench him right now.
You'd bench him if he was on your team.
I think maybe one or two more
there's
weeks.
people out there probably benching Chris Johnson and today like Darren McFadden right now, and they're both arguable top 5 running backs. They're not producing. A non-producing wide receiver. Why wouldn't you bench him as well?
Yeah, absolutely. But speaking of moving ahead to Chris Johnson, Darren McFadden, I included Jamal Charles in this group. Just early round picks that are just not panning out right now at all. Chris Johnson has 19 carries for 21 yards on the season. I think we're making fun of him calling CJ 0K. Darren McFadden similarly doesn't have a good yards per carry. Jamal Charles had a good week 1, but he stumbled this past week. These 3 guys, are you starting them in any league going forward?
Jamal Charles, you have to give him a break. He's coming off the torn ACL, and I don't think you can possibly expect as much out of him as you expect out of Chris Johnson, or, as I like to say, doesn't run DMC. This early in the season, it's shocking. It's just shocking to me. I don't know what to do at this point. I have Chris Johnson on my team, and I want to bench him, but I feel like
You could just
someone
go off.
that big a name, I can't make myself.
Because the worst would be having him on the bench and then having him go off for 126 and 2 touchdowns.
I think you'd still
be
rather
devastating.
that, though, because going forward, you could start him. But
Yeah.
sorry, what do you think about them?
I think Darren McFadden's going to get on track. He's actually on my team, and the rushing yards haven't been there, but the receiving yards are there. He's
That's a plus for him.
right.
Carson
He had
Palmer
86 in the
lost
first
second
game. I don't know. He didn't have. It wasn't great last game, but it's just tough for running backs when you fall behind. Like when you fall behind, they don't get a lot of work. But
It's a different league now.
right.
For the passing.
because you're not going to run the ball as much. I think he only had 14 carries last game, and that was and that's because the Raiders fell behind early. So I think McFadden's going to bounce back. Johnson, he's getting paid. He's being paid like an elite running back, so he should be producing like one. But that's tough to say with him.
Yeah.
I would put him on the bench for now.
Absolutely. So with that, we'll conclude another edition of Fantasy Football Weekly. I'm Brendan Toomer here with Dan Charsky and Sarah Hugh. Thanks for listening, and best of luck in your Fantasy Leagues Week 3. Is it really?
Dum dum dum. Alright. Yes, I guess. We'll just edit it out.
You're gonna edit it with your gay edit phone device?
Possible pickups, like say for example, Mikel Lesford.
It's Michael LaShore. Retard. Yes. Dun 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 dun
No,
dun.
we're not
dun,
doing
dun.
that, Dave.
Yes, we are.
I can play piano.
Well, that should definitely be our intro song.
Making my way downtown,
The boom, #1 running back of a beat.
He's memorized it. What the? Stop!
What's he doing?
Stop! We're not watching that. Stop. It says niggas.
Look at how
Time.
fuck, that fan could have fucked shit up big time.
I'm gon' ride. I'm gon' ride. They gon' ride. We all gon' ride. I come from the hub of South